Hello and welcome to another episode of Katie the Science Lady. I'm Mrs. Jacobson. Today's topic is biomolecules. So let's learn together. Today we're talking about biomolecules, which are also known as macromolecules. And they are the building blocks of life. They're things that are required for our cells to survive. And I'll go through four today. There are four main types: nucleic acids, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. The first thing we have to understand when we talk about biomolecules is that monomers build up into polymers. Monomers are small units that join together, and I think of them as these little Lego pieces over here. Because they're smaller and they're not really much on their own, but once they build together and create a polymer, a large compound, they are something recognizable. And I picked the Lego Death Star because I am a Star Wars fan. Some examples of these polymers that we're talking about today are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, are biomolecules. And again, the difference between monomer and polymer, monomers are going to be smaller pieces that you're going to use together to build up to a polymer, a larger compound. Carbohydrates is the first macromolecule or biomolecule we're talking about today. It's made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Most of us just say CHO, and we know what that means. The function of carbohydrates is as a source of energy, but it's short-term energy. This is something where if you're getting on to maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it's after lunch and you are just kind of tired or sleepy, or you need a little bit of energy to keep yourself going, you might have a granola bar or a piece of fruit or something quick to give you some energy. Examples from our diet include sugar and anything sugar is found in, so cakes, cookies, brownies, ice cream, all those really, really yummy things are made of carbs. And then we have things like rice, bread, potatoes, and all those other starchy things. In addition, fruits and vegetables have carbohydrates in them as well. They're mostly water, but they also do have carbohydrates in them. The monomer of a carbohydrate, so the small building block, is called a monosaccharide. Mono means single, and saccharine means sugar, so it is a simple sugar. While the monomer is a monosaccharide, like glucose, when you build it up together, you make that polymer. And in this case, it's called a disaccharide, di meaning two, saccharide meaning sugar. So we have a monomer or a monosaccharide, a disaccharide, and if we kept adding glucose molecules to this chain down here, we'd get a polysaccharide. Lipids is the second biomolecule we're going to go about learning today, and they're also made of CHO. So they're also carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They are structured differently, but they're made of the same basic things. Now, lipids store energy long term. This should make sense if I tell you that another name for lipids is fat. So we know that fat can be stored in our bodies, and that's why we've got sometimes a little bit of fat on the outside of our organs that's there to protect them, and also in case of emergency, we've got some energy stored up. They're also the building blocks of our cell membranes. Our cell membranes are almost entirely made of lipid. There are some other components to our cell membranes. There's some carbohydrate components and some proteins in our cell membrane as well, but the building block are those lipids. Some examples from your diet would include oils and butters, and examples from your life would be waxes, steroids, and makeup. So if you use Burt's Bees, you are using lipids on your lips to keep them protected from the elements. The monomers are glycerol and fatty acids. It's kind of a 2-4. So you've got the glycerol head, which kind of comes like this, and then there's fatty acid chains that come off of it in 3s. Proteins are the third type of biomolecule. I think these are the most, it's hard to say one's most important because you need them all. But without proteins, nothing gets done in your cells. They are a huge, huge source of work. Proteins are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So we say that they are made of CHON. It's one of my favorite things. Also a very good band. Check them out. The functions are numerous, and they include building body structures. That's why you take protein to make your muscles bigger after you work out. They control chemical reactions, and those are called enzymes. And they also make up parts of our cell membrane. But the biggest thing is that they control those chemical reactions in our cells. They speed things up so that we don't have to move at a snail's pace, so that our body's cells can do what they need to do quickly. Some examples from our diet include meat or muscle. Muscle is meat. It's the same thing. We just don't always call it that because it's a little creepy to say, I'm eating muscle wings today. Kind of weird. Hair and nails. Your hair and your nails are both made of protein. Now, it's not the same protein like you would eat. It's structured differently, but you theoretically could eat it. Kind of weird. Enzymes, which are going to speed up those chemical reactions. Peanut butter, beans, all of those things. Milk has protein in it. Yogurt, all sorts of things in your diet has protein. The monomer of a protein is an amino acid. There are 20 different kinds of amino acids. That's it. And they form these big, long chains, and that's what's going to help build your proteins. Here are those protein chains, like I just mentioned. They're made of amino acids. They're denoted here as AA1, AA2, AA4. There are 20 different kinds, and they all do have individual names, but we're not going to get into that quite yet. In between these amino acids are very strong bonds called peptide bonds. They are incredibly strong, which is important because proteins do so much good work for us. We don't want them to be easily broken. We want them to be strong and be able to stand up to repetition and work. Nucleic acids, the fourth category we're talking about. You could argue these are the most important because it is your genetic code. DNA is made of nucleic acids. That's the Na in DNA, nucleic acid. It's also our cellular energy. Now, we eat the other components, the other biomolecules, carbs, proteins, and lipids, for energy, but our body is going to take those carbs and lipids and proteins, digest them, and then be able to turn them in to cellular energy. So there is a difference between energy from what you eat and how it gets turned into the energy molecule called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. Nucleic acids are made of CHON and P for phosphorus. We can call it chump if you wanted to. It's a little dorky, but I'm also a little dorky. Some of the examples, like I said, are genetic codes, which are DNA and RNA. RNA meaning ribonucleic acid, and then ATP, adenosine triphosphate, our energy molecule. It's hard for me to call that energy itself. It's not actually just energy, like sunlight is energy. But adenosine triphosphate is a molecule that when it breaks apart, it releases energy. So it's ATP, I think of as more like a battery because you get energy from it. It's not actually energy itself, if that makes sense. The monomer of nucleic acids is called a nucleotide. And a nucleotide is made of a couple of things: a sugar, a phosphate, that's where the P comes from, the chump, and a base. And we will go over that more as we talk about DNA structure and how DNA replicates itself. But for right now, knowing that it's a nucleotide, again, nucleic acid, nucleotide goes together, is helpful. Here's that structure. We have a phosphate, a sugar, and then a base. There are a couple different kinds of bases, which we will go into more in depth later. And they connect like this, and they have bonds in the middle. So we'll have a nucleotide here, and in the middle we have some hydrogen bonds. Nucleic acids in DNA form a double helix structure. They twist, and it forms that shape that you know and that you've seen before. Our four types of nucleic acids are mentioned here, so I'll go ahead and mention them. Adenine and thymine always bond together. Guanine and cytosine always bond together. And again, we'll go over this again in a later lecture, but just for your information, this is the shape of DNA. It is made up of nucleic acids, and these are the base pairs.
Let's recap what we've learned. Today we talked about biomolecules, which are molecules that are necessary for life. And we had four that we talked about today: nucleic acids, carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, or fats. Nucleic acids are incredibly important. They make up our genetic material and the energy currency of our cells, ATP. So some examples would be DNA and RNA, and the Na stands for nucleic acid. One of the most important types of biomolecules are proteins, and they do a lot of the cellular work in our cells. So this could be anything from speeding up chemical reactions, and those are called enzymes, to building our muscles, to helping our immune system, to any one of hundreds of other functions they may have. Some examples in your diet would include meat and beans, and then other examples of things made from protein would be our hair and our nails. Carbohydrates are what give us our quick energy, and they're made of single sugars called monosaccharides. Some examples in our diet are really varied. They can be fruits and vegetables. We can find them in pastas and potatoes and bread. And we find them in sugar. So anything that tastes sweet or sugary probably has some carbs in it. They're the tastiest kind. The fourth biomolecule we're talking about is lipids. Lipids are also known as fats, and their job is to insulate and protect our organs and form our source of long-term energy. There are several other functions for lipids as well, but those are the two most well known. Some examples from your diet would include butters, oils, and then beeswaxes or other waxes and steroids. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more biology videos, and I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you later.